For more on that, let's bring in Tony Gosling, investigative journalist joining us from Bristol. Mr. Gosling, thank you for your time. Is this suspension by the European Parliament a real turning point in EU-US relations, in your opinion, or is it still Brussels posturing while hoping that Washington would change course?
Well, it's the latter. I think mainly because the European Parliament is unelected. In terms of the actual individuals in there, they do get elected, but the Parliament, the people who are running the Parliament, have very little real power. When it comes to a trade deal, a lot of that is going to be influenced in the future. And now, not by the European Parliament, but by the European Commission and also by the individual member states. So, it's very interesting to see how this has all developed, isn't it? So, first of all, we get Trump is trying very hard to get the Europeans to make peace in Ukraine. They are constantly thwarting his efforts to, by saying one specific thing, that they want to have NATO troops in Ukraine. This is something that Russia will never, ever accept. And so the Europeans have really scuppered the Ukraine peace deal. Now, Trump is now putting pressure on, firstly by saying, I'm going to seize Greenland. Now, this puts the ball firmly back in the Europeans' court. What are you going to do about that, Europeans? And, because, of course, Greenland is part of Denmark. And the NATO Secretary General, the previous one, Stoltenberg, was the Danish leader, ex-Danish leader. And so this has caused all sorts of pressure to be put onto the Europeans. Now, Trump is, because of the negative reaction about Greenland, Trump is saying, I have more tricks up my sleeve. And he's saying 10% on tariffs on European goods. Really, the Europeans don't have much of a choice here because the United States is such a big market for them. Yes, there's quite a lot of goods come to Europe from the US as well. But the Europeans, for a start, on defense, I mean, we've got tens of thousands of American troops here in Europe, and also for trade, really do rely on having a decent working relationship with the Americans. So in order to sort this trade deal out, the Europeans may be forced now to make peace with Russia and to agree not to be sending NATO or other European troops into Ukraine.
Yes, Mr. Gosling, France is calling this blackmail and says the EU has powerful tools to respond to this. What are those tools exactly?
Well, look, the European Union uses blackmail all the time. These EU sanctions, they've already been sanctioning individuals in Russia, etc. So they can't complain when these tactics are used against them. Trump is playing dirty, isn't he? So the effect of all of this is potentially disastrous. It could, it could even crash the global economy to have a serious trade war between the United States and the European Union. We've seen already, literally in the last day or so, markets in the United States, the NASDAQ, the Dow Jones and the FTSE down 2%. That's a massive amount for the market to fall. We've seen these sorts of massive changes. So the Europeans are going to have to decide, which do they think is more important, to have a functioning economy or to have peace with Russia? Well, actually, they may be able to have both. They may be able to have peace with Russia and a functioning economy. But they're going to have to make the decision about, I think, and I honestly think that's what this is about. If the Europeans were to start to talk peace, Ursula von der Leyen and the rest of them, to start to say, yes, we want to end this conflict in Ukraine, come to a settlement, then you would find all these illusions and delusions about Greenland, American troops swarming all over Greenland, which I don't think is going to happen, and the trade war calming down very quickly. So let's just see what the European leaders are made of as to which way they decide to go.
And zooming out, it is said by a lot of people that this attack on Greenland by Donald Trump would signal the end of NATO. Do you also think the same way?
Definitely. I mean, the whole NATO have been keeping very quiet, haven't they? What happens? It's not in the NATO treaty. If one NATO country was to attack another NATO country, what happens then? Do all the other NATO countries then have to counterattack and obliterate those two countries that have attacked each other? This is unprecedented territory, and that's why Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, has been keeping his head down. Keeping well away, because suddenly we've seen that NATO is not the strong organisation that we thought it was, that it could actually potentially crumble in an instant. Anyway, I mean, I am a massive opponent of NATO. I think what it's done is through the years, when countries have joined, they've found that their own secret services and security apparatus have basically been taken over by NATO. So the Brussels NATO headquarters has been really interfering with all of the NATO members' security. Hence, we've seen quite a lot of terrorist attacks, etc. And if you go back to the 1970s and 1980s, you will find NATO's Operation Gladio going through European countries and
Yes.
With terrorists, far-right terrorists, blowing things up, blowing individuals up in an attempt to blame it on the left and on the Soviet sympathizers. So NATO is, I think, a very malign force, and what Trump is doing now is also signaling his dislike for NATO. He doesn't believe that the other NATO member states pay anything like their fair share for the protection, so-called protection, that these US troops are doing. And it's good to see some of the peace organisations in London signalling that one of the reactions of Europe might be to eject the American troops. We've got something like 10,000 US troops here in Britain at Menwith Hill, places like Lakenheath, and also they're talking about now running American drones out of British Air Force bases all around Europe, and goodness knows where they will end up. So that might be a better way to respond than having a trade war, would be simply to tell the Americans to finally, after about, I think 1950, they came back here after World War II, they can leave. So let's see how this all ends, and if it ends with the destruction and the dismantling of NATO and its revelation that it's actually really a bit of a paper tiger, all the better.
And my final question before I let you go, Mr. Gosling. After Russia's invasion of Ukraine, European leaders warned against becoming a modern-day Chamberlain by accommodating Putin. They said no one should even negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Should that same logic right now be applied to Donald Trump when we are looking at his actions and his threats just in the year of 2026?
Well, look, it depends if you want peace in the world or not. You have to negotiate with everybody, and you certainly shouldn't be demonizing Putin. His invasion of Ukraine was to protect the Russian-speaking Donbass, which had been under attack, with something like 15,000 casualties, because the Kiev-based coup leaders, many of whom were pro-Nazi leaders in Kiev, had been attacking that region from 2014 till around about 7 or 8 years, and they were massing for an invasion of the Donbass. So that's why Putin went in, to protect the Russian-speaking people. And the sooner that the West recognises that, the better. The Western media don't seem to want to know. But they, again, a bit like NATO, have been lying for so long. Maybe their lies are going to be cut short somehow, quite quickly. But Donald Trump is definitely, I think, a catalyst for a lot of questioning that's going on around the West right now. And there is an absolute right of the Russians to be in the Donbass, because in that part of Ukraine, those people voted between 90 and 95%, the Russian speakers, that they wanted Russia to be running the country, not Ukraine, who'd banned the Russian language and who were killing them. So it's hardly surprising that that the Russians went into the Donbass, and it's only people like Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron that are actually keeping this war going for their own interests. They just hate Putin for all sorts of reasons, and one of the things they hate him for is because he's about 1,000 times more popular than they are in their own countries. Putin is actually a very popular leader in Russia, and many of our Western leaders are more like financial puppet leaders who the people despise. So they hate the fact that Putin is so popular too.
Tony Gosling, investigative journalist, joining us from Bristol. Thank you for your time tonight.